Tachi, TLL, everyone. I hope everyone is well. We gather here today to acknowledge that we are being hosted on the unceded lands of the Anishinaabe, the Algonquin peoples. Canoes for centuries have traversed down the beautiful waters that we see out these windows here this afternoon. So we give thanks and recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous people on these lands. Marseille, thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg. I should also say to those of you who are joining us live at home, welcome. We're happy that you could make it. We're going to get started with the program now. And so I'm going to start introducing some of our panelists. So I'd like to start first by inviting the president of the Douglas Coldwell Layton Foundation up here to the stage, Karl Bélanger. Thank you, Karl. Thank you so much. I'd then like to invite our Vice President and former Member of Parliament, the wonderful Irene Mathyssen. And I would also like to invite our board member and Broadbent Institute fellow, as well as the 2011 campaign director, the one and only Brad Lavigne. Last but certainly not least, one of the most dynamic people you will ever meet. Brings me great pleasure to invite up former Member of Parliament, but also the founder and executive director of the Institute for Change Leaders, our good friend, Olivia Chow. So Olivia is going to be our moderator tonight. I'm about to hand it off to her. I want to let everyone know that we have a bonus for you. So after this fireside chat about the Douglas Coldwell Layton Foundation, Olivia Chow and Mike Perry, who you just met shortly before, are going to take you through a training session from the Institute for Change Leaders about how we tell stories to win campaigns. So with that said, why don't I hand it off to Olivia Chow? Enjoy the program, and I'll talk to you before we all depart. Thank you.
Not a training, it's just having fun. How's everybody doing? Yeah? Big round of applause to people that are serving us. Women at the bar. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And all the tech people, right? Making it happen. It's a bit, oh, by the way, we are joined by a whole lot of people on Zoom, okay? Maybe we should do a shout out to people that are watching on Zoom. Welcome to all of you. This is amazing panel, okay? And it gives us so much pride every time we talk about Tommy Douglas, okay? So to be able to be on the stage, that is a Douglas Coldwell Layton Foundation that celebrates his dreams. Karl, you've been the president of this amazing foundation for a few years, huh? So what is this foundation? And tell me, what was Tommy's dream for this charity? We want to learn about his dream so we could make it happen every day.
Well, thank you, Olivia. Thank you so much for being here and moderating this panel. It is an amazing foundation, but I would wager that a lot of you didn't know about it, perhaps even before tonight, even though we are currently celebrating our 50th anniversary. This foundation was created in 1971 by Tommy Douglas himself, with the support of MJ Coldwell, who was the last leader of the CCF and a mentor to Tommy. And Tommy insisted on MJ Coldwell's name to be attached to the foundation. And pretty proud also that we were able, just this year, as we are moving on to the next 50 year of the foundation, to add Jack Layton's name to the foundation. Thank you, Olivia and the family, for allowing that to happen. Tommy's vision at the time, I mean, there's a quote, and you can go on our YouTube channel to watch the video of Tommy talking about the foundation. But he wanted it to be a gadfly to provoke discussions, to prevent the movement of the left, the political movement, the labor movement, the corporate movement from getting in a rut. So he wanted this foundation to be seen and heard and raise issues and provide information and provide fodder for thoughts and discussion amongst the left-wing movement. Now, of course, one of the pillars on which he built this foundation was to try to create something similar to what is known as the Fabian Society in the UK. The Fabian Society, which is linked to the Labour Party. Now, in Canada, we have different laws and different ways to operate. We have no links with the NDP. None of us have any links with the NDP. We are independent, we're nonpartisan, we are a charitable organization, and our mandate is to promote education and research into social democracy. Why? Because if we don't do it, nobody else will. If you look at the books that are being published about other parties' leaders, prime ministers, premiers, there's tons of books about liberals, tons of books about conservatives, not a lot of books about New Democrats, Social Democrats, labor leaders. Why is that? Why is that? They made a huge difference, so much so that Tommy Douglas a few years ago was chosen by Canadians as the greatest Canadian. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to raise funds to give tools to people to learn more, to preserve the legacy about our founders, about the people that made a difference in this country. They may not always have been in power. They may not always have been the ones that were in charge, but they made a huge difference. Donc, la Fondation Douglas Coldwell Layton célèbre son 50e anniversaire. On est très heureux de ça. On a l'intention de devenir un joueur de plus important, de plus en plus important sur la scène canadienne, pour qu'on puisse informer les gens, donner un peu d'éducation civique, mais aussi préserver l'histoire qui souvent est édulcorée à cause du monde dans lequel on est et de la place qu'on occupe. Il y a une place qui nous revient et on entend bien la voix.
Wow. Wow. Tell me more about the dream, Irene. What does that mean to you of Tommy's dream? Well, Tommy was very clear that he didn't want the work that he and MJ Coldwell and some incredible leaders had done to be forgotten, to fall into the rut that Karl described. And to that end, he very selflessly insisted that the DCL be created and that it be non-partisan, a charity, so that people could be promoted, that the leaders could be promoted. And Tommy insisted that the initial plan was to make it the Douglas Foundation, but he insisted that his colleague, MJ Coldwell, be honored in the same way, because he had given so much as the leader in Saskatchewan after Tommy left to become the federal leader, the first leader of the New Democratic Party. And so this foundation, 50 years old, as Karl has indicated, was created to make sure that the right wing didn't take over all of the airspace. And we know that they certainly are well-founded and well-funded. Remember, and I'm nonpartisan, and I'm not going to be at all political here, but you may recall the Trump years, when the right wing was coming out of the woodwork with bags and bags of money, and it's in exchange for oil leases and promises of being allowed to do whatever they wanted in terms of the environment and the manipulation of laws, mostly against people who were poor, mostly against women, mostly against the vulnerable.
well, essentially they could do whatever they want, and they did. And they did. And they managed to create charities and fund universities and hire their own professors in order to make sure that students heard only that right-wing mantra. And so Ed Broadbent, with his foundation, which is entirely, or with his institute, which is political, decided that he had to step in, and the DCL has stepped in to make sure that those progressive voices are heard. And it's done in a number of ways, some of which Karl described, but I'm not going to hog the entire time, and I'm going to let Brad have a word in edgewise. We usually don't allow that, but tonight we'll allow.
Got too many over the
Well, Brad,
years. With that
yeah,
introduction.
what's the difference between us and the American, the Leadership Institute, for example?
Well, so allow me to answer your first question, Olivia, and that is the dream. And I think if we want to understand what Tommy's dream was for the foundation, I think it's important to take a look at 50 years ago when Tommy stepped down as leader of a political party, New Democratic Party of Canada. He served as leader for 10 years. At that time, in 1971, he had already been in public office for 36 years. His first election was in 1935 when he ran federally and would sit up with a handful, I think there was 8 others at the time in that 1935 election. The Depression was obviously something that he and his fellow CCF members of Parliament fought the sitting government tooth and nail. Tommy then went on provincial politics. 1944 was the first time he was elected premier. He was re-elected in 48, 52, 56, and 60. Then he went, and I know that there's some people here from all across the country. I'm originally from British Columbia, born and raised in Coquitlam. And I have the pointing out that British Columbians have an equal ownership over Tommy's legacy than our friends from Saskatchewan. In that, Mr. Douglas was the member of parliament for my hometown, and I know David Black is here somewhere, Coquitlam, and then he went on to serve as member of parliament in Nanaimo and the islands up until 1979. So for the same amount of time, Tommy was a representative of the people of British Columbia as long as he was a premier of Saskatchewan. So it's just to even it out and to create fights later at the bar. Throughout his entire 36 years, up until 1971, because he went on to serve many more years in the House of Commons, Tommy had to fight for everything that he and his colleagues in government and in caucus had to achieve. And he saw that. And he saw that Social Democrats did not have enough ammunition to take on the constant barrage against our philosophy and our values, and that we needed more. We needed a foundation that was dedicated to the education of social democracy, that it would be clear in its mandate that we would promote through education, through scholarships, through grants, through the publications of books, and we would stay in our charitable status lane to ensure that we promoted the issues of social democracy. And I know that we have other rounds of questioning where we're going to tie it all together as to how the foundation fits in with the overall building of the ecosystem. When we look today in 2022, it's much different Canada than it was in 1971. And I submit that the challenges are even greater, but so too are the opportunities. We're coming out of, and hopefully coming out of, the pandemic. The pandemic has done so many things to so many Canadians and around the world. We've shone a light, the pandemic has, on the fractures within our social safety net, within growing inequality in this country. We have an opportunity through the foundation, in partnership with other organizations, including and especially the Broadbent Institute, to turn the next coming years. The next era should be our era. And it is at the foundation where we promote the values of social democracy on how we can usher in a progressive era in Canada and around the world by building linkages. And today and tonight is a part of that building of linkages.
Hey, thank you, Brad. So I mean, we already talked a bit about the difference, right? One's charitable. Right? The others are, whether it's Book Restaurant or Broadbent Institute is not. Okay? And then there are a lot of NGOs that are also a charity. So what are the difference between this foundation and some of the other NGOs out there? Are there, maybe you can talk a bit about that?
Well, other NGOs do some quite remarkable work on the ground with women's organizations, with those who are struggling economically. I've worked with a great number of those, and they do wonderful work, but they have to be very careful because a lot of them are funded through government, and that makes them unable to respond to some of the things that governments do. And I can tell you that after sitting in the House of Commons for 14 years, watching successive governments was quite soul destroying because they would make threats against NGOs and organizations that advocated.
And remember Kairos?
Yes, Kairos and the Native Women's Association. Yeah, all threatened with defunding and really rendered unable to do the work that they so desperately wanted to do. So DCLF is different in as much as it's membership based and it is a charity. So the funding that it receives is tax deductible, but this funding allows everyone who wishes to be a member, and I would encourage everyone in here to become a member because that gives you access to the work that we're doing, incredible work, to archives, to publications, to information about scholarship. The work that is happening in the schools, the universities, the colleges, at all levels in Canada. And it gives you a say in terms of being part of that movement and instrumental in the direction that we take. And that is so very social democratic. And so please give that a great deal of thought. In fact, Brad is here to arm wrestle you on the way out the door and prevent you from leaving if you are not a member. And
Must join.
and yes, so let's all join.
I'm already a monthly donor. So, yeah, so that's the reason, don't depend on government money, right?
Right.
Now, there are other things, it's democratic, it's run by the
Grassroots
members. Yeah,
movement,
grassroots movement.
Absolutely.
What else? Is there anything else?
Well, do you know any other NGO or institute that
Ah.
help publish children's book about the life?
Oh, yeah.
the
a
greatest
boy named
Canadian?
Tommy Douglas,
So
yes.
this is an exclusivity for you tonight. It's it's an exclusive copy we got. It's coming to a good bookstore near you soon. That's the kind of thing we do. When we talk about civic education, I think it is worth pointing that we're helping out to let people know about the history that we all share. And the reality is that there's no organization like us that is dedicated to preserving the legacy and the work of social democrats in the way the foundation does. Now, we haven't been very visible or very vocal or seen and heard over the past, let's say, 45 years, 50 years. It was a good start at the beginning when Tommy was involved, and then kind of focused on giving out scholarships and helping out others, or other NGOs, other organizations. But we're about to move into more of an active role in terms of getting research published, peer research, academic research, materials that is going to be available for all to use, not only social democrats. It's going to be so good, such great research. And one of the initiatives we're launching is, it's going to happen in June. I can give you a little bit of an exclusive here, but it's the Alexa McDonough Women's Leadership Center.
Wow,
Wow.
Alexa Madonna, do we have Alexa?
And so we will have research, we'll focus on the history, the stories of this great woman that were part of the social democratic movement in this country, their contribution, and also issues that affect women in this country from a social democratic lens, but all based on data, research, and published and reviewed in a way that it can be used by other who don't share necessarily our worldview.
That's exciting. Brad, tell me, you know the progressive movements really well. What is it that makes us, why should progressive folks join in? What makes it so special that they need to come together? I know democracy is our middle name, right? We need the progressive to join in. Why is it so important? And then after that, tell me a bit about that Layton guy that you worked with for quite a few years. You added his name in here. What happened there?
Okay, let's get to all
One
of
at
that.
a time.
Let's get to all that. Yeah,
Progressive,
one thing at a time. So I think to understand the fundamental differences between the Douglas Coldwell Layton Foundation and the Broadbent Institute, I think that's I'm going to build on the points that my friends have made. And I invite people to look at how these entities fit together. Social democracy in this country has three pillars on which we have built. We have, and the pillars have been built on three fundamental areas that are vital to the growth and maintenance of social democracy in this country, right? There's three things that we basically need. One is education, the second is organizing, and the third is the levers of governing. And we have built three organizations that respond to each of these three needs. As social democrats, we compete to govern through the New Democratic Party of Canada. We fight for election campaigns to govern, whether at the municipal, provincial, and federal levels. That's through the governance pillar. The organizing pillar. Broadbent Institute, founded in 2011, was founded on the need to boost social democrats when it comes to what I call organizing writ large. That is, the need to convene, like progress summits like this. The need to train, like what goes on all across the country that the institutes do, to be a home for organizing young people, new people to politics, wanting to make a difference in their community. And things like Press Progress, a media outlet. Back in the early 2000s, when Jack was leader, it was recognized at the time that in order for us to compete, we needed to be in every aspect of the field. We needed to take the field. We needed to suit up and take the field. And at the time, we were not. People were very active. Progressives were incredibly active. They were fighting the globalization movement. It was emerging environmental movement. Nothing like we see today, but it was certainly there and it was strong. They just didn't see their home in social democracy. That was a problem that we wanted to fix. And when the Institute was launched in 2011, it was to fill that need. The third pillar is education. And that's what the Douglas Coldwell Layton Foundation is there to do. Through the party, we elect, through the Institute, we organize, and through the foundation, we educate. And if you think about it, there are over 200 public post-secondary institutions in this country. Every year, people go through those institutions. And to Irene's point, increasingly, in the last 10, 15, 20 years, we've seen the conservative movement, and you see it here in Canada, and you see it globally, right? The Koch brothers in the States have got billions of dollars the world over to organize for conservative movements. Business community, conservative movements, they are highly organized. The question needs to be, we've built our institutions. We've got our three pillars. The next phase that we need to do is we need to unite people to come and participate in each of these three pillars. And through the Douglas Coldwell Layton Foundation, and nobody is leaving until they sign up on the way out. That's what the sliders are for. Sliders for your name. That's the deal.
Did we mention you get a deductible charitable tax receipt?
Yes, yes, yes.
We don't do it for the tax receipts, Carl. We do it because we are committed to building social democracy. We need all players on the field in all three pillars in our communities, right across this country. And together we will build the country of our dreams and the country of Tommy's dream. He started it. It's our role, our responsibility to finish the job. And everyone is invited to participate in all of these. We work together with the Institute, and we're encouraging everyone to sign up and participate in your local communities, because I would love to see one day right across this country where we have scholarships, professors who are advocating, who are educating on social democracy, because our friends in the conservative movement are doing it. We must suit up, roll up our sleeves, fulfill Tommy's dream, and get it done. One day throughout this country, we will have Douglas Coldwell Layton scholarships and professorships and schools of social democracy that helps the labor movement, that helps the reconciliation within this country. We can get there, but we all need to unite. And that's the call for me today, is let's pull together and let's get this done. The opportunity is there, and the time couldn't be more important.
So, you know what? You don't have to wait till you leave, but you can get up and get a drink and get a few more cider. It's cold, huh? There's good turkey there. You can actually pick up your phone and go to the new website. Okay, the
Brand
new
new,
website,
brand new
brand new website. And this, because there's this Layton name into this.
Ooh.
Yeah, tell me how did that? Yeah, so go and check out the website right now, and while you're there, join. But tell us about that, adding that Layton. Carl, you've been with Jack for a
Layton
long
fellow
time.
guy.
Yeah, that fellow, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. MJ Coldwell was a great guy. Tommy Douglas was a great guy. And they are known entities to a certain generation. Jack Layton is a newer name that will allow us to bridge to that new generation. We're giving scholarships across the country that are based on people that may not seem relevant to today's challenges. They're wrong. By bringing Jack Layton, we're building that bridge. We're making sure that that gap is filled, because we are able to reach out to a new generation of people who may not have heard of MJ Coldwell, who may not remember Tommy Douglas, but they've seen Jack Layton in action. They've heard Jack Layton speak. They know what he stood for, and they believe that what he stood for deserves to be preserved, built on, and that we need to learn about what he was standing for and the issues he was caring about. That's why we brought him in, and could not be, I said again, more thankful that you and Mike and Sarah is allowing us, giving us the honor to be the carrier of the Layton legacy going forward.
Irene, you've dealt with many movements before, and why people should join, and what does adding in that Layton name meant?
Well, I had the great privilege to serve in caucus with Jack Layton and with Olivia Chow. But I can tell you that every day in that caucus with Jack as our leader was a day to celebrate. And his presence and his vision and his hard work mattered to all of us as caucus members, but it was reflected in the greater community. Now, I want to step back a little bit. I think all of us rejoiced when Tommy Douglas was named the greatest Canadian. And that was fabulous, because I had spent so much time on doorsteps talking about Medicare and universal health care and Tommy Douglas. And too often the eyes would glaze over and people would clearly reflect that they didn't have a clue who Tommy Douglas was. They thought that Medicare came out of the sky. And even worse, that some liberal, Paul Martin Sr., had actually been the author of it. And so when Tommy was named the greatest Canadian, I was very happy, because it was so important to connect that education and the reality of our history and the leadership that people like Tommy and MJ had provided in a public way. And that's where people like David Lewis and Jack Layton and Alexa McDonough come in. And Jack, as I say, he was incredible. He was inspirational. And it was Jack who brought the whole issue of climate change and the environment very much to the forefront. He brought a bill to the House of Commons twice, only to have it eviscerated by the Senate. And he brought the issue of housing very much to the forefront. And if you think about what is going on right now, it's that issue of housing, homelessness, and the desperation that Canadians are feeling because they can't look after their families, they can't find a home that they can afford. And at one point in time, over 1 million people, 1 million Canadians were homeless, and that included families with children. And that is in a Canada that is incredibly wealthy, that has abundance of resources, and it provides opportunity, but there has to be that understanding through education that that has to be implemented in a way that has integrity. And that's where Jack came in. And of course, there was Alexa, and we are celebrating her in June. And she brought forward the issue of women, their participation, and all that they had contributed, because it's largely overlooked. There are people who don't know what Margaret Mitchell was, or Rosemary Brown, and that is a shame. And so DCLF is making a difference and making sure that that stops being the reality through education. And so we all need to support that, and I know that you will.
I actually saw quite a few of you on your phone. Those of you that joined, can you raise up your phone? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask this question again later on. I remember who has not put up your hand. Okay? Sorry, I'll sit back down. Always an activist. How? Brad. You spent a lot. In fact, you helped Jack to become the leader. Yeah, you were right in the middle of that campaign, 2002. So progressive, why do they need to join? Why do they need to join this big movement? And why like?
Let me maybe answer that question by maybe relaying a question I had from a journalist earlier today. And they were asking, and I don't know, I mean, I've been coming in and out of the agenda, for the last day, but I don't know if there's been enough consideration of the historical supply and confidence agreement that was just announced a couple of days ago. But it got some journalists thinking to please compare what's transpired in the last week and a half in the agreement there and what Jack was able to do in the 2005 budget. And there are many things. And it, I think, speaks to why it's important to bring the Layton name into the foundation. It's also, part of a conversation that we have as social democrats as to how the three pillars fit into the ecosystem. And not to start certain debates, but I spend my time in electoral politics in order to win. And when we come short, we spend our time in our elected offices getting things done for the people that sent us. And that was certainly one of the things that Jack Layton talked about every day while he was leader. And he did. And he changed not only the tone, but he actually got concrete things done. The fundamental difference between the Sing supply and because they changed it in BC, it's the deal. Confidence and supply agreement. In the federal, it's the supply confidence agreement. Anyway, the deal, the arrangement, the agreement. For Jack, we took $4.6 billion that were scheduled to go to corporate tax cuts in 2005 budget. And Paul Martin was in a minority parliament, and Paul Martin did not have anybody to support his budget. So Jack, being, very savvy in seizing opportunities, said, well, I've got an offer. We've got some votes. We can help get the budget through, but we're going to take those $4.6 billion if you want to reducing corporate tax cuts, and we'd rather see them investments into people. And what were some of those investments? Housing, Irene mentioned housing.
Transit.
Under the Liberals, they got out of the business of building housing. And in fact, it was the minority parliament in 1972 to 1974 that David Lewis and people like Ed Broadbent fought and got the establishment of major projects of building social housing. That was going to happen anyway, wasn't it? Right? Well, anyway, of course it was going to happen. So Jack got some money in the housing.
1.6 billion.
Thank you. Yeah, you see, what a good memory. Olivia was there. But the one story I love, and again, from BC, but now I live in Toronto. If anybody here is from Toronto and you ride the Yonge line, the yellow line, and you take the subway, those cars that you're sitting in, depending on the time of day, were from the Jack Layton Better Balanced Budget deal. They got the money. This is a great story. This is a great story. Olivia might remember some of this. Olivia was on the TTC, the Toronto Transit Commission board at the time, got the money from Ottawa, went to the Toronto Transit Commission. They then gave the money or bought the transit cars in Thunder Bay, Bombardier unionized workers, built the cars, brought them down, and we're still riding today. That was 2005. That was a long time ago, but they're very nice cars. And I take the green line. So I prefer, if only Layton had more budgets to craft, we might be sitting in better cars in the green line. Alas, the bottom line was, those were one-time funds that we were able to allocate. The difference between Jack Layton's agreement with Paul Martin in 2005 and the current caucus's deal is that dental care and the changes to pharmacare and the other 5 planks of that deal are not one-offs, but they are permanent long-term funding. And we need to acknowledge the good work of Social Democrats at the House of Commons, because without them, kids under 12 would not be getting their teeth fixed before the end of this calendar year. Kids under 18 won't be getting their teeth fixed until after 2023. The kinds of pragmatic linkages between the economist that was Jack Layton and the author that was Jack Layton and the thinker, and trust me, when Karl and the other staff had to listen to Jack pontificate on stuff, we would perhaps sometimes roll, but he was an organizer and a pragmatist at heart. And I'm just very proud to be on the board that shares his name, because he's an important part of the social democratic movement in this country. It's nothing but a privilege to continue his legacy, to make sure that future generations don't forget Tommy, don't forget MJ, and don't forget Jack.
In fact, that money also went to foreign development, foreign aid, and post-secondary education, and some money for workers on the pension. So I see people are joining. Okay? Other than just joining, if they run progressive organizations, what's something that they could collaborate with the foundation? Is there something they could do? They're joining. I see they're joining. Or you want to imagine some of the projects that you are doing in the upcoming years. Why should they all join? Not just as individual, but also as organizations.
We are a grassroots organization. Without people, we're nothing. That's the bottom line. And if we're nothing, then who's going to pick up the work that we're trying to achieve? Who's going to preserve the legacy? Who's going to do the research to prove that the investment we just talked about are actually working and making a difference in people's lives? Nobody's going to research that. Nobody's going to give scholarships to people to look into that. And if there are no incentives, then that work's not going to get done, which means that some other work will get done. And it's not going to be work that will help people the way we think they should be helped. So that's really the bottom line. And, of course, by joining and becoming a member, you get to participate in the AGM, which is, as any social democrat know, a tremendous opportunity.
Point of order. Irene, I'm sure you can come to wonderful parties, right? Get good gathering, good parties, learn some history, many other things, join the movement.
join the movement and participate in terms of helping us to fill those archives. The Alexa McDonough leadership campaign has to do with the stories that are out there that so many of us don't know. And as a participant, as a member of DCLF, you can become part of that archive. I'm sure there are all kinds of stories in this room. Some of them can be written down and are printable. And those are the ones that we want in the archives. So we want to hear about those stories and about the things that you know of these social democratic leaders. For example, I hadn't realized how instrumental Alexa was in terms of building and saving the NDP from a disastrous election in 1993. She was on the ground. She traveled across the country and she made sure that the NDP survived, because think in terms of what Brad has just told us. If it had not survived, we wouldn't have dental care for our kids, and we wouldn't have pharmacare by the end of this agreement. We wouldn't have any of those things, because I want you to also think about how far back women were talking about childcare. And I think I remember something like 1960. And people were talking about pharmacare. That was Tommy Douglas talking in the early 60s about pharmacare. And it may have been promised, but it never happened. And so we want to hear the stories of the people that made things happen. People like Jack and people like Alexa and people like David Lewis. And I'm sure that all of you here have something to tell us, some kernel of exciting information that we can make part of the archive so that we can do that incredible educational work and let people know what it means to be a social democrat and what it meant to this country and will continue to be to this country in the next 50 years.
Hey, Riley,
Just
you have some ideas.
very quickly, just two things I'll add to that. Why it would be important to get involved is because I think for any grassroots organization to be effective, it has to have local input. And so think of how in your community, where is the opportunity?
Right. It's early.
Too early. Where in your local community is there an opportunity for the foundation to spread through its education, right, the values of social democracy? Can't see it everywhere from this vantage point, from Ottawa, from the capital, because it has to grow across the country. Can't be centralized from one location here. So that's the first. And with that, we can really grow and to build social democratic value foundations through education in new spots, in new communities. Maybe it hasn't seen it before, but we're ready to work with you folks to get those seeds planted. That's first. Second, I know we're probably coming towards the end here, but I also just wanted people to understand another thing that's, I think, vitally important for us to not pass through acknowledging. And that is, as you look out the window here, you can see where this city was held hostage by I'm not going to call it a trucker convoy, because it was a very, very minority that exploited one particular profession to leverage. Those people came from all over the country, particularly in the West, but they came in from Quebec and they came in from Atlantic Canada. And there is something going on in this country, and I'm certainly not going to, pontificate on all of the things that are on that. But there is an anger, hostility we're seeing the rise of neo-fascism in this country that is organizing itself at the grassroots, and that we must work within our communities to fight against these things in our local communities, because it's not just enough to shut down Wellington and to seize properties. Those are things after the fact. This cancer that's growing within our country, we need to identify it.
and we need to combat it. And social democracy needs to flourish. It needs to provide answers to people who've been alienated, who've been left out. And we are providing those answers. And we need, through education, through the foundation, and through your collaboration and involvement, we can help build the movement that will help fight this cancer that is emerging and has emerged and has settled into our country. And that is something that I want people to give consideration to. How do we do it in our local? Sometimes it feels a bit overwhelming. Sometimes it feels one person can't make a difference. Spending time through the foundation, volunteering, signing up, organizing in your communities. Together we can help contribute to the fight back. And that's, I think, one of the contributions that we can bring together through education on social democracy through the foundation.
Brad, you are maybe the youngest here. Of the
I'm
okay.
definitely the youngest here.
So 50 years.
Point of order.
50 years.
Why a personal privilege?
50 years. Imagine I can see you living another 50 years.
Oh, yeah.
What is the vision 50 years from now? What do you see this great foundation can accomplish? You know, that dream. Where do you see it? Yeah.
I don't want to be on the board still in 50. I'll give it 30, but I'm not saying for 50.
Karl.
Karl will still be the president. And I'll second the motion. I like when we talk amongst the board about where we want to go, there's an impatience. There's so much good stuff that needs to get done. There's so much work that needs to get done. What I envision, and I haven't passed this by the board, so this is not formal policy of the foundation.
Just say it.
I like not only do I want an ecosystem through our post-secondary education system of scholarships, professorships, programs, departments. I want to see schools. There's enough business schools. There's enough conservative think tanks. They've taken over enough of our public institutions. So I love, and I wouldn't give it 50. I'd give it maybe a shorter runway.
Okay.
But I would love to see
Within
the school of social democracy built, maybe one or two, something in the French, Quebec, something in English Canada, something in the Indigenous communities, but pillars within the post-secondary institute to give our young people an option for them to pursue studies, to immerse themselves in social democracy, to be part of future generations of solving it. I want to build schools throughout this country if I had my druthers.
well said. Actually, there's a Japanese school for advisors. But we'll go more about that later when I talk about the institute. But Irene, and then we'll finish with the president.
Yes, and in 50 years, when I'm still 25, I envision what Brad has talked about, and that is a positive reaction to the kind of ills that this country is facing instead of a negative. And if any of you read Press Progress, you'll know that a lot of that nastiness was funded by right-wing corporations. So I want the opposite of that. I want those schools that are progressive and that are teaching young people and scholars and members of our community that there are positive and productive ways of ensuring that they are not wanting, that they're not suffering, and that they share in what this country has to offer. And I also want to know that in 50 years, the name Tommy Douglas, MJ Caldwell, David Lewis, Alexa McDonough, and Jack Layton are synonymous with successful and incredible leadership, that those names are known and they're celebrated across this country as they should be. So we've got some work to do, but hey, we've got this incredible group. It's a piece of cake. We can do it.
Mr. President, one thing you want to accomplish here on the vision.
Well, I'm going to quote a very famous social democrat. I forgot his name, but if you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will come. And the day after 50 years is that the foundation has done great work. We've helped Broadbent Institute to get started. We've helped Gravel. We've helped Straight Goods. Like you didn't know about this, but we've helped. We give funding to these organizations to get started. We can do more. We've also given scholarships. We have currently 7 scholarships across the country. We honor the memory of G.S. Woodsworth at the University of Toronto, Anne-Marie Hill at the University of Toronto again. We also have the Beverly Bell Scholarship to Advance Democracy and Human Rights in Developing Nations. That's important work. Beverly was a longtime NDP staff. David Lewis Memorial Prize in Canadian Politics at the University of Toronto's Woodward College. We do that. We have, of course, the Tommy Douglas Graduate Scholarship that we just renewed with the University of Regina. Former Labour leader, long-standing former leader and former president of the DCF, Colin Kaplinski Scholarship in Human Rights at the University of Carleton. And we just announced recently, we're just gaining a new scholarship, the Jack Layton Prize for a Better Canada at McGill University. We need more of that. I mean, if you look at what academics and post-secondary education students are looking into it, especially when they're in politics, they look a lot at what the Liberals did. They look a lot at what the Conservatives did, but not a lot about what the NDP did, what the CCF did, what the Labour movement did. Why is that? Well, we're going to try to remedy that by giving them more scholarships. I see NDP MP Alistair McGregor in the room. Why not a UVic Alistair McGregor Awards for being smart and witty? Why not? There are so many people we need to recognize and we need to advance, and also we need to give incentives to these students to be interested, to learn, and to spread knowledge, spreading knowledge, educate people about the achievement that we've done as a movement, that we were able to get by working hard against odds and getting results for people, sometimes because we were not interested so much into getting credit, but more into getting things done for people.
Thank you so much, Olivia. I just want to, on behalf of the board of directors, I want to say thank you for being with us here tonight. It really means a lot to us to have you as such a strong ally and partner, and we're very, very grateful. Thanks to Mike Perry for that last piece as well. Before we conclude, I want to say thank you to 2 very important organizations, to the United Steelworkers of Canada and to the Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada, PIPS, both of which are partner organizations of the Douglas Coldwell Layton Foundation. We can't do this kind of work without that kind of support. So if you belong to a union or an organization who would like to come on board, if you found what Karl or Irene and what Brad had to say, what Olivia just did, inspiring, and you'd like to help, please come talk to me about a partnership program. I would welcome the conversation. To all of you at home, please get involved. Visit our new website. Take time to find out about all of the work that we can do and the work we can do together. That said, thank you all. Special thanks to the Broadbent Institute and the Broadbent Institute staff here today. Special thanks to the Weston staff. Why don't we give her a big round of applause? Why not? Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much. UFCW members, by the way, for UFCW. So thank you all very, very much for making the time. Come talk to me. I'm going to be around. Come talk to Karl, Brad, Olivia. We would love to hear from you. Take care. Go see you.